Okay, trigger point therapy. Who knows about trigger points? Yep. So, pretty much, what you want to be doing, trigger point is just an area of muscle. It's what you typically call a knot in the muscle. So it's a bit of the muscle where the fibers are wound up really tightly and it doesn't want to let go. It's not literally knotted in itself, like some people sometimes tend to believe. You get trigger points in all sorts of areas. The worst ones for you guys are generally in top of your glutes, around there. In your TFL, which is your tensor fasciae latae, it's a little muscle that sits above that ITB. So it's on the side of the leg and it runs up to that bony bit at the front of the pelvis. So if you find that bony bit that the ITB starts on, and you find the bony bit at the front of your pelvis, that's where it runs through there. If that guy gets tight and it's overworking, then your ITB is going to get tight and you get problems with your knee. So you don't want that thing to get tight. What you can do is get something like a little spiky ball or a doorknob or tennis ball, golf ball, anything. Chuck it on the ground and lie on it. You want to get it into that TFL in particular. Don't just roll into it and think, shit, that hurts, I'm going to move off and find a different spot. The tender spots correspond with usually where your trigger points are. So you want to be getting into that spot. You'll probably feel pain running down your leg or into your bum or around that area. That's okay. What you want to feel is that that muscle relaxes under the pressure. So give it a good 30 seconds to a minute before you actually sort of try and release it. And make sure you're using your breathing to try and let it go. So every time you're breathing in, as you let the air out, let that muscle relax, let that muscle relax. You'll find that the pain will go away, and that's the time that you can then roll around and find another point to hit. So, but wait until it's released until you change spots. Questions about that?
Charlie, how many times a week should you do that?
Trigger pointing, look, it depends how tight you're getting, and everyone's going to be different, so it's a bit of a case-by-case situation. If you know you get sore, particularly around the front of the pelvis there or in through glutes, then certainly be doing it that night after a race, the next day, that kind of thing. Generally at least a couple of times a week throughout the season, I'd be recommending it. So, let's talk about shoes. Alright, shoes are pretty important. Everyone is different, everyone's feet is different. So there's a lot of variation in how you run. You would have, at some stage, I'm sure, gone into an athlete's foot or one of those sort of stores and seen the fit print, things where you walk across it and they're trying to look at what pattern you use when you walk. They're not great, but they can give you a general idea of whether or not you're rolling in or not. Most of you are buying your shoes on Wiggle anyway, which if you're not, you should be. Wiggle, we don't sell shoes, so I'm not trying to flog anything, I'm just trying to give some advice that you're buying the right shoes. Wiggle is an English website that sends stuff, usually they arrive about a week, guys, you agree? And it's damn cheap, so get into Wiggle or East Bay, which is the American version of that sort of thing, any of those stores for cheap shoes. You need to think about when you're selecting shoes, things like the influence it's going to have up your leg. Again, remembering that lower limb injuries are the most common in you guys. So if you change something at your foot, it can have a big effect at your knee and also up to your hip and into your lower back. You don't need to change much with triathlon to actually get a good effect because the sport is so repetitive and the nature is so repetitive. So if something's maybe 1 or 2 degrees out, and that could be because of a different shoe selection, then you can either change something for the better or change something for the worse pretty quickly, especially if you're racking up lots of Ks training. Your weight is something to consider as well. So if you're carrying a few extra kilos or you're just a heavier guy or girl in general, you're going to wear out shoes a bit quicker anyway. If you're lighter, you can probably get away with keeping them for a bit longer. A question I often get asked is, am I in the wrong shoe? And it depends entirely on you as an individual. The literature states a few different things in a whole lot of different studies. It's pretty vague, but in essence, if you're getting pain in your lower limb, then you need to consider what's going on in your feet. If you're not getting pain in your lower limb, then you don't need to. There's good evidence out there to support the fact that if you're in a shoe and you're having no troubles, don't change it. That's when people start to go wrong, is when they make changes just for the hell of it. Some of you might be trying to change into racing flats at some point as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So that's the sort of only anomaly to that. The other good evidence we have is for a poor fit. So it doesn't matter if you're the best shoe and it's the right shoe for your type of foot. If it's a poor fit, you're going to run into problems and you're going to get pain at some point. So make sure you've got a properly fitting shoe. I'll just go back. So as far as As far as how often you should change your shoes, they talk about, and when I say they, that's the shoe manufacturers, generally talk about 600 to 1,000 Ks per pair of shoes for a standard pair of runners. So that's something like, say, a Nimbus or a Kayano or something like that, where you've got a decent amount of support there and not a pared back racing flat. If you're running longer than that, then you're generally going to wear them out pretty quickly and they're going to pad it by then. That's what the manufacturer is telling you though. So everyone will be different. Some people will wear it out quicker again, others will be able to get a lot longer out of them. It generally depends on, I think, the easiest thing to look for are stress lines in the shoe. So when you look at the inside of the shoe, you'll find that there's a bit of foam on the inside there. You've heard of the term pronator before? Anyone not heard of that? So when your foot rolls in, it's a normal part of the foot movement when you walk and when you run. If you're rolling in too much, in its most basic form, you're going to wear out the inside of the shoe more because there's more load wanting to go through that. So it'll start to show through that inside of the sole there. You get lines that start to develop running horizontally across there. And when you push on them, you'll see that the shoe around that line really gives quite easily. If you compare it to a new shoe like this where you've got a lot of resistance in there, you'll be able to squash it quite easily. If you're getting stress lines and they're giving way pretty easily, that's a good sign that your midsole of the shoe has lost all its density and it's time to change them. So that's what I generally use as a guide as to when to change it, which everyone will be different. 600 to 1,000 Ks is sort of average. Racing flats, again, shoe companies will tell you every 5 to 10 races you should be changing them over. I could never afford to do that, I know most of you couldn't. It's one of these things, look for the stress lines, see when that's happening. So, now, what else? Oh, if you're getting sore as well, is the other time to change shoes. So if you've been fine in a pair of shoes for the first sort of 500 Ks of their life, and then you start getting sore, then think about some newies.
Charles, the notion of having multiple shoes, like two and then rotating around?
Yeah, look, I think the idea is that you don't trap any sweat in the shoe, which then will make it degrade quicker and you lose that midsole. So it's not a bad idea if you can afford that, and they're not too expensive these days anyway, so get into that. Considering the amount you guys are spending on bikes, you should be racing. Okay, now, so what we got? So I just wanted to show you a couple of just different shoes, just so you know what you're looking for. That is a Kayano, which is a control shoe or a guided shoe. There's lots of different terms you'll hear them talked about. If you see on the picture on the top right there, it's got that grey bit of foam on the inside there. See that there, the grey bit on the inside? It's grey for a reason because it's a high density foam, so it's harder to squash down, which means that it's going to stop you rolling in more. Think about it like that. You can pass that one around if you want. That one there that we're passing around is a DS trainer, which is, you've seen the Noosa Tries before. Anyone seen the colourful ones that people wear? That's basically just the Noosa Try without the colours on it. So it's a lighter weight version than something like a Kayano, but you're still going to get quite a bit of stability through there. It's not a paired back racing flat though. So a neutral runner, this is the Brooks Ghost, this one. On the inside of the shoe there, it won't have that hard bit of foam, so it'll be the same stuff all the way around pretty much. Something like a Nimbus is against a neutral runner, so pass that one around. So it can make quite a bit of difference, and often we find that you don't even need to go down the path of getting orthotics and things like that. If you're getting sore feet or knees or hips, you might just need to change in footwear, and that can be enough to get enough change further up that kinetic chain into the lower level. A racing flat looks something like that. That's a Brooks T7. Not a lot of support. Generally, if you're just starting out, don't go and buy a pair of them and do all your training and running in them. It's usually a good idea to, if you're going to get into some of these, because they're a lot lighter. People feel like they're running faster, whether or not you are is another question. If you're wanting to get into these, you've got to go into them slowly and phase them in, and that's usually something that is done under the guidance of a podiatrist. So if you're thinking about it, go and see Kay, who works downstairs, and he'll be able to sort you out with a program to build that in. But they can be quite good. Yeah, so this is just how often you should be changing it, we talked about earlier. And finally, go and get a bike set up if you haven't had it done, okay? Ollie does them through Reasonable and they're brilliant. I'm baffled constantly by the number of problems we get, either because your bike's not set up properly, or because you've gone and spent, how much is the P3, guys? Sarah? 6 grand? Cervelo P3, this is a 5 grand? 4 or 5 grand? If you're spending 4 to 5 grand on a bike, even if you're not, if you're buying a bike and you're going to be on it as much as you're going to be on it, you need it to be in the right position. Not only to stop your chance of injury, but also you're going to be getting more power out of it. So those that have had setups done are constantly telling me that they feel like they're actually able to ride a lot faster and harder for longer as a result. So go and get something like that done. You're spending so long on it, it's worth your while. So I think it's about it. Are there any questions? Nope. Cool. Thanks for coming, guys. Those that got the vouchers have to send out that. Sweet. Ollie, did you want to say some stuff?
So, anyone else have questions, I presume? Yep. Fantastic. All right, well, what we'll do is I'll just wrap it up with a few questions if anyone's got any, or if not, I know most of you guys will have your eyes hanging out of your head right about now. Any questions?
In terms of doing a TO course, how often does that happen if you wanted to go down the route of assisting at races rather than actually going?
Yeah, excellent. Actually, I'll elaborate on that quickly. So they'll advertise them very shortly. We usually get them across our desk at trial nights. But what I'll do is I'll inquire in the next couple of days to see when the next... Sorry? November? Yeah, cool. I know there's also a level 1 tri coaching course, and it's only for people who want to be a coach. They've also introduced a level 0, which is for people who want to know more about the sport from an athlete point of view. That will be in November as well. But the level 1 is for people who want to become coaches, which we're putting a few coaches through, potential coaches through in November. So, yes, and... Right, any other... Does that answer your question? Yeah. Any other questions?
Social event Thursdays, is that going moving when we move to Elwood? Is there going to be a...
Yes, we'll continue that on. We've done, I think we've kept that social night pretty much going for the last, I don't know, 3 months or so. But it's due for definitely a change of venues in terms of a venue spot. So we'll definitely be posting that shortly. And then also probably the other thing too with moving to Elwood is Saturday morning's breakfast. Yeah, so coffee and breakfast down at Sales usually is a big one after most sessions. Yeah, Elwood Beach rocks for that.
It's an Italian restaurant.
Italian restaurant?
Yeah, the cafe's gone.
So Elwood Beach Cafe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
Sales?
what's that chain?
Is it really?
Italian restaurant.
Doesn't matter, there's a cafe 100 metres on the other side of the car park, so we might be going there.
Absolutely not.
No, it's
Well, who was there's some Breckies and
It's like it's not. What's that?
Anyway,
not for long course. I won't be having tea.
Yeah, it's like
Any other questions? Just so I can let people go. Oh, thanks. You just went to you got the number 1 brownies. All right, any other questions?
thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks again to Charlie for coming in. Happy birthday to Dave today. Happy birthday to Daniel. Who else had a birthday last week? Oh, Chris. Happy birthday, Chris. I think we had about 8 people last week with birthdays.